Hey and welcome to Discard. As some of you guys know, this channel is all about finding cool game room ideas and displays for people's game spaces and game collections. And as such, a lot of us are looking for really cool, cheap ways of finding displays so that we can show off our collections or just get that secondary use out of our games. And that's why I had to bring up some of these really cool 3D printed display ideas for you guys to check out. Certainly you'll need a 3D printer if you want to print some of these, but a lot of them are available on things like Etsy for you guys to find and purchase as well. Let's take a look. So before I go in and start rattling off some of these really cool displays that are available to be 3D printed or purchased, I definitely wanted to bring up the idea that a lot of these are coming from 3D files, and 3D files are easily copyable. So I'm going to do my best to say who made these, but there's always a possibility that they weren't the original person who made these designs. So always keep that in mind when you're looking at 3D printing. So to start off with something that I think is a little bit tricky for some people to display are these little stands for mini consoles. This design comes from Simon Holmboe and essentially makes a very simple design for taking your mini console and kind of lifting up the backside of them. This sort of angled effect gives you a lot more view of the top of the consoles where a lot of the action happens. You can see a lot more of the beautiful parts of these consoles on the very top of them, and most of the time when you're setting these down someplace, you're just seeing the front, and the same goes for some of the larger consoles, which I have a solution for later as well. And personally, I don't think stands need a lot of extra frills, a bunch of designs on them to make them very special. It just has to hold the thing in a manner that is display worthy, and I think this really knocks it out. Keeps it very simple, it's a fast print, and overall, it's displayed any mini console that I put in it and done it really well. So hats off to this one. Now, as an example of something that's kind of hard to find a traditional kind of catch-all stand for, and something that I just haven't found stands for in general, is this 8BitDo M30. And Matthew Forrester on Thingiverse also made this stand perfectly designed for this controller. Overall, this is my favorite controller to use when I'm using a Sega Genesis or I'm using Analog's version of the Sega Genesis. This is just a great controller overall, but man, finding a display stand for something so curvy has been really tricky. I think Matthew did a really good job here of kind of making a perfect imprint of the bottom of this controller so that you can just set it in there, the curves all match, it looks really great from the front. It's a really nice display to have there next to your system so that you can grab it and go and start playing. I just overall really like this stand as a really simple stand for that controller. And there's really not that many controller stands that would fit with this particular model just because of those curves. And boy, I can't recommend that controller enough. That's such a good controller. It deserves a stand. Another stand that I came across is this kind of all-in-one Game Boy and Games combo display stand. I don't necessarily think this is the most beautiful display stand, and I think it even goes a little too far in some areas, putting designs of Pokeballs and Triforces on there and putting names on there. I just think it's a great example of the kinds of stands that you can find on Thingiverse. A lot of these designs go a little bit too far and put stuff all over it just because they have access to digital files and just kind of slam them on there. This stand is by James Patterson. I think he did a great job of modeling this and getting it so that everything works correctly. All the holes for where you put your Game Boy games are the right size, and any Game Boy is going to fit on here. There's a nice little etch in the bottom there where you can lean your Game Boy and it's going to be perfectly fine there. So this is a great example of a way to have a nice easy access point for a few games that you're really into, having your console there easy to grab, and you're set. I was also running out of 3D printer filament. I printed this in glow-in-the-dark filament. That's another really cool thing you can do with 3D printers. You can make everything glow in the dark. Now onto something that's probably the biggest star of the show today, and that's this amazing design that comes in from Jeff Chen. You can find him on Thingiverse under The Jeff Chen, and he makes some amazing designs that you can tell he's really taken the time to think out all the possibilities when it comes to these. His design is designed first of all in the shape of the Gamecube logo, but that also has some other effects to it as well. And of course, it's a display stand for a Gamecube. He's also thought out the fact that many people may have a Game Boy player at the bottom of their GameCube. So in my pictures, you'll see it with the Game Boy player, and there's little notches in the actual stand itself to kind of link into pieces of your GameCube so that it holds it there, won't fall over. You could do a ton of stuff to this. You could push on it, you can do all sorts of things, and it's not gonna fall off the stand. Jeff Chen even recommends plugging in your GameCube this way, though he recommends using it with wireless controllers. I think you could still play this wired. I don't know if you'd want to be yanking on this thing all the time and pulling it all over the place. But I think this is a stand that's a perfect example of the kind of thing you just can't buy someplace. This is only accessible through Thingiverse, from what I understand. It's an amazing print to get printed out. If you have a regular GameCube, you can still print one for those. It's a little bit smaller. The actual GameCube design logo at the bottom acts as kind of a like a spring in a way. If you try to push this thing over, it flexes a little bit and keeps that GameCube steady. I mean, all in all, after a lot of testing, this thing holds up to everything that he said about it. You're not going to knock things over. It's going to display that GameCube beautifully. It's designed to be able to operate with, though I'm not sure about, you know, turning your consoles on their side, especially if they're disc-based, and kind of adding in a little bit of extra imbalance to the system. I think it's specifically fantastic for displaying a GameCube that you're really in love with, and that's just awesome. And of course, after being so in love with this design, I tweeted it out on my Twitter, Discart Guy, and a lot of people started interacting on there, talking about how you would make a controller stand for this that kind of fit the same angle and vibe of this controller. And I went out of my way to kind of learn to do some 3D modeling and figure it out on my own. I ended up making two stands myself, and one of them's for a Wavebird, so you don't have to deal with wires. This stand doesn't have anything to hold those wires. It's not going to be a problem. You just put the Wavebird in here and it kind of holds it on this 45-degree angle. Looks fantastic. A great way to display your Wavebirds. Also easy access point for them. You don't have to worry about any issues with just grabbing that Wavebird out of there. The second design that I made is actually for a wired GameCube controller. This one comes with a million caveats. I just wanted to get to a point where I was unable to see the cord. It showed off the most important parts, which was the GameCube and the end of the wire there, and it was as minimal as I possibly could make it while doing those things. So this is definitely not a grab-and-go stand that you'd be able to utilize with a system. This is more like you have a favorite GameCube controller and you want to display it. Essentially, I hid the cord on the underside, made it so you had to weave it underneath these little bars under there that keeps it all nice and tight under there without bending the cords too much. I was very happy with the end result of that design, and it shows just anybody can go out and make some 3D stuff. I used free software that's browser based, so you know, it's very simple to get a hold of that and get making stuff. Oh, and before I get too deep into this, and don't ask why I've got a jacket on, that's besides the point. But you should be checking out Rocker Gaming. Rocker Gaming does all of this stuff and way more. He mods consoles and 3D prints and makes molds of stuff all around the retro and modern game space. So if you're into a lot of this DIY stuff, definitely go and check out his channel. There will be a link in the description. And another thing that I found that was easily printable on Thingiverse is this design by Squink, which is for Game Boy Colors. I think this is a fairly simple display, though they went a little bit overboard, probably adding the Game Boy to the front and a Triforce on there. Again, a lot of people end up doing that and kind of adding a little bit too much, in my opinion. I think it mostly should be about the thing that you're displaying, but a lot of people do like this kind of stand. So overall, it does what it says it's supposed to do, and this is the kind of example of the thing that you can find. If you have a type of Game Boy, a very specific type of Game Boy that you want to find a display stand for, and you only want to spend a very little amount of money, we're talking pennies to make these things, then 3D printing might be the way to go. This is a great example of how cheap something can be. I do get nostalgia for the Game Boy stuff. I mean, they put it on there and I just want to print it out. So I guess maybe that's the angle. One thing I've definitely not seen enough cool storage / display ideas for is UMDs for the PSP. Those little things are all sorts of different angles and curvatures, and they're just really odd. So finding this really cool display that kind of allows you to organize a few UMDs if you don't happen to have cases for them is pretty cool. Doesn't really show off the artwork that's on these, though I really think UMDs are the ugliest thing when it comes to gaming. I don't think they have a good way of being displayed, and I'm still waiting for that aha moment where I come across something that I think is a great way to show off these things. But I do think this is a good way to organize them at the very least and have them all neatly in a spot in your collection. I think at least displaying things in an organized manner gives them some impact. So hats off to DibiRez, who was the person who made this. Definitely a cool design. Now occasionally in my videos people will see that I have a Starlink display that's out there on one of my shelves. I really like displaying Starlink ships. I think they're incredibly detailed, very, very cool toys to life. Probably the best toys to life that there's been, other than maybe Amiibo. But as far as most people know, there's not that many ways to display these. Now at the time that these came out, I didn't have a 3D printer, but if I did, I may have ended up using a stand that looked a lot like this. This design is by Fusaws, and I think it does a really good job of incorporating the right things into the display stand. The stand will hold the ship up, which gives it this nice effect of kind of flying, which I think is the optimal way to display these ships. I mean, setting them down on a shelf just doesn't have the same impact as seeing a fleet of these bad boys flying off of your shelf. Now there's a bunch of different designs of these out on Thingiverse as well. I picked this one because it's very simple. It has the ship at the top and it has a place for the character at the bottom. There's other ones that have parts for the weapons and many other things, but I think this one keeps it simple and probably shows the most stuff that you'd want to be showing off anyway. Simply just pop your Starlink ship on top of this and you're ready to rock. So overall, good design. I think it's a fantastic display that's worthy of anyone's collection. I definitely like it. And the last display that I have today, and I think it has a really big impact, comes in from Manreen, and that's these awesome tilted stands for your larger consoles. These are just two small stands that you put underneath any of your home consoles. I would think it would even work with some of the modern consoles that are out there, but certainly a lot of the smaller retro consoles will work with these. But essentially all it's doing is tilting it up a little bit, giving you a nice angle display for those systems. Great way to display these. I think it's so cool. I've been looking for a very long time for a way to easily display these consoles, give them a little bit of an angle so that just like the mini console stand that we saw earlier, you can see the tops of these consoles. That's where all the art is. That's where a lot of the really cool stuff to look at is. And if all you're doing with your console is setting it on a shelf, this is a great way to put it on there, see extra little pieces of it and get everything out of it, get that secondary use. I think it's awesome. Cool bonus to these is they don't use very much filament and they're really quick print. So you can print off a bunch of these and have all your consoles angled and looking beautiful in no time. So in the future, I'm hoping to kind of have a series where whenever some of these really cool designs come off, like Jeff Chen's really cool GameCube display, I have a place to kind of show those to you guys and what's happening in that world. So keep an eye out for, you know, every few weeks or so coming out with a 3D printing video to kind of showcase those items. But thanks for everybody who stuck around. I know I'm trying something a little bit new. Not everyone's got a 3D printer. Not everyone wants to DIY stuff. I get it. Most of the videos that I have are going to be around stuff that you can go out and purchase and have sent to your house compared to, you know, 3D printed or DIY'd, etc. I think a lot of us agree that that's an easier way of dealing with stuff, especially got a lot of things going on in your life. But thank you for watching the video today. If you did like this video, please leave a like on it. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. Outside of that, just have a fantastic day today and collect what you love.
I was out there alone, moving from station to station. I've been searching for the right one, but I was ready for